Geography and a lot of ground to cover in a short period of time. Welcome to Western Colorado, exactly, apropos. So because he's a repeat player, and we've heard a little bit from him, I'm going to start with Ryan Jackman. And I do want to start with noting this because it is somewhat unusual. You are here representing your panel up the street, and you're not a governmental employee. Who are the governmental leaders on your panel? And let me ask you a specific question. In terms of learning, how did you develop that trusted relationship between public health professionals and governmental leaders? Because those two worlds don't always intersect and collaborate as productively as they have in Mesa County.
Sure, I'd like to give you a very, thoughtful answer as to how I negotiated that, but I think it was a matter of just having had a developed relationship with our non-voting members as a physician that was working in addiction in our community and our boards that were already doing work, and then as we brought together our abatement council, having the trust as somebody who could speak both languages. And so the decision was made, despite my protest, by the Commissioner Rowland, who is the chair of the committee, as well as all of the elected officials who are on the board that encompass, I'm sure, what many of your boards encompass. We have the school district and police and a number of other public officials representing each of our townships. I was elected to be the co-chair so that I can represent the non-voting members on our board. So I don't vote, but I co-chair so that both interests are always before the board.
Let me highlight that institutional innovation and learning. You heard from Commissioner Lasky. She has 52 members and has created a very inclusive culture for non-voting members, including a number of people with lived experience who are really respected and listened to. Here in Mesa County, a different type and also an impressive move of elevating your leadership and, again, a respect for what you have learned. Let me jump to Region 5, which is, for those of you driving from here to the Front Range, going to cover a number of the counties. This is obviously a different dynamic than Mesa, because Mesa, within a county, had a certain head start where you've really had to build that regional connectivity. What have you learned as you work to do that? And maybe, Jared, introduce yourself a little bit too.
Sure, yeah, I'm Jared Rollins. I'm a social worker by trade. And I think one of the things that we have tried to do across the region, which is vast, is combine efforts. Each of these communities, each of these regions had in some way started different councils, coalitions on whether it was a mental health issue, suicide issue, or substance use issue, and really leveraging those relationships that had already begun for work for years, and combining those efforts.
And you said you're a social worker. Where are you working with?
I work in a small primary care practice in Basalt, Colorado.
And how did you end up as part of the council?
So years ago, I wrote and was awarded an ARCOR grant, which is for planning for opioid treatment, prevention, and recovery.
Thank you. I will say, on this side of the table, you end up with three very different paths into this. It's great to have you and Ryan from your perspective, and then in what I think is really commendable, Sergeant Joe Boyle has taken this from the law enforcement side. And did you get started with the medication-assisted treatment in your jail? Was that your pathway in, or how did you get committed to this work?
Yeah, so I started in I've been in the jail for about 14 years now. Yeah. I grew up in New Jersey, and I lost a lot of my friends to overdoses and prison, and so it's something I'm very passionate about, and I've always felt that, you know, our jails are a reflection of our community, and if it's happening in our jails, it's happening in our community. And so that being said, when I got lieutenant in 2017, I applied for a grant through the BHA to expand mental health services and SUD services for our jail. So I hired an SUD group therapist, and then we also have telepsychiatry, telecounseling, and then I started our MAT program and also case management for our jail. The program got so big, it was hard for me to manage my jail administrator duties and the program, so I decided to just focus on the program because that's what I'm passionate about. So I created the JBBS project manager position and MAT coordinator for our jail, and that's what I've been doing. And my county commissioners asked me if I would be part of this council because they saw the work I was doing, and I'm honored to be here.
Well, thank you for that work. We are going to lean in on this, making sure that we have every single jail providing medication-assisted treatment. KCU, who's on the council, the Opioid Abatement Council, is committed to this, your neighbor in Monmouth County, and it's something where I really believe there's an incredible opportunity. For those who don't know the data, if you go to jail and you go through withdrawal, and you leave the jail and you go back to using, you're 100 times more likely to overdose because your body's gotten reset. By contrast, if you go to jail and you get treatment and you get a warm handoff, you're far more likely to be able to have a path into recovery. So think about the difference that that makes. And so that's one area we're going to lean into. It's been great seeing this partnership, rural and urban. There were a lot of counties who were afraid to try what you guys are doing. What have you learned, and how are you making it work so you can both serve Jefferson County and Gilpin and Clear Creek counties?
Thanks so much, A.G. Weiser. I'm Leslie Dahlkemper, Jefferson County Commissioner, and I co-chair GROC, or Gateway to the Rockies Opioid Council, Region 10, with Commissioner Marlin. And I think first and foremost, we put our values on the table, and we brought together many diverse voices to that table as we said it. We held a conference around this time, actually just a little bit earlier, last summer, to really ask community members and leaders from the three counties, who's missing from the table? What does the landscape look like? What's working well? Where are the gaps? And most importantly, how do you want to engage in this process? So we rolled up our shirt sleeves during that conference. We also heard from a panel with lived experience, and we took those lessons forward and integrated them into our work as a council. And we still use that feedback today. Values that really center on equity across all three counties, especially when you have the fourth largest county working in concert with Gilpin and Clear Creek counties. We also looked at the importance of transparency, telling our story, lived experience, and more. And with that, I'll turn it over to George for more.
Yeah, thank you. And a lot of the success we've had, to the extent we've had it, is a credit to Commissioner Dahlkemper in Jefferson County for really being a partner that listens. There's a legacy in Clear Creek County, and I think a lot of rural counties, of thinking about our lack of resources and feeling like we're on the outside looking in and maybe deciding to disengage. That's definitely what was happening in Clear Creek County. And I think what I've learned, I'm reminded of what you said, A.G. Weiser, in your opening statement, that the opposite of addiction is connectedness. Very similar dynamic when you're talking about a rural county reaching out and trying to work with a much bigger county, hundreds of times bigger. And I think the lesson I'm taking from this is that hope is not irrational when you are connected, when you're working together, when you're thinking about possibilities rather than constraints, and building relationships rather than trying to do it on your own.
So, Patrick and Kirsten, tell us a little about your background and what have you guys learned in Region 15?
Hi, so I'm Kirsten Love, and I am also a social worker. Hi, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I just came into this work. I'm relatively new, and I am very excited for all the things that our region has done. I asked Patrick to be here because he's been here since the beginning. I inherited this council from of my predecessor, Mike O'Reilly, who did a lot of work in getting things happening in our region. And he started our Substance Abuse Regional Coalition, which contains most the same counties, except for we trade Lake County for Park County. So that's been really exciting to get to work with all of those people. But I asked Patrick because he was here since the beginning.
Hello everyone, Patrick Fiore with Custer County Public Health. And so to go to some of the things that we've learned, our 4 counties are all rural, and one of those is Frontier. For some of you who are unfamiliar, Frontier is approximately 6 people per square mile or less. And we have some very stretched out and thin resources and services. The ones that we have access to are very far away. We have about 3 cities, Salida and Kane City and Pueblo, that I call cities. I think some people call them towns. That we can really access. So it's a little more difficult for us. Rural counties really pride themselves in community and community involvement and support, and so it's really reaching out to our community members, not just the stakeholders and the leaders of the community, but people who are within those communities to make them feel empowered, that they have a sense in this type of a process. And whether it's a community needs assessment or something like that, it's just because this is a public thing, this settlement money, everyone seems to know about it if you read the news. It's not like a grant where only departments know. And so they want to know about it in the process and to stay informed.
Let me start with a question to you all, because you made a decision in terms of your infrastructure grant priorities to put prevention and youth prevention at the top of your list and supported Boys and Girls Clubs. What led you to that conclusion, and what should others know about your thinking and what you learned?
Sure, I can talk a little bit about prevention. The Boys and Girls Club was the Fremont and Chaffee thing. So, I mean, I think as probably most of everyone here knows, that prevention is probably some of the most cost-benefit analysis where what you put into it comes out tenfold on the other end long-term. And, obviously if you can prevent something from happening in the first place, you don't have to react to it and respond to it later. One of the difficult things that we learned and are still learning in our region is that coming up with a singular framework for all 4 of our counties that can benefit equally from is a very difficult thing to do. We all have different preventative services going on. We all benefit from the substance abuse block grants. We all have some school programs. 3 of us have the Boys and Girls Club. But to find something that is equally beneficial, that can be a singular framework, whether it's one location, something like that, or program, has become something that's very difficult. We're still working on those plans, which would lead to the first question of what have we learned, and that's something that we're still learning on and don't have a very good answer to.
I can speak for our county, Chaffee County. We looked at for prevention needs from our Healthy Kids Colorado survey data, and we saw an immediate need we needed to look at right now. And so the prevention work group, since we could not settle on something that fit the whole region, we decided for these first 2 years to move forward with each county's immediate needs. And we are looking at working with our LGBTQ population, and our youth health disparities has a work group through CTC, the Communities That Care. And we are going to put money towards GSAs, which proved to be highly effective in helping to reduce suicide and substance use for that population. So we're super excited for that, and also really committed to looking for something that we can use across the region. And we felt it was highly important for everybody to look at what is right here, what is right now, how do we protect our youth in this moment, because it can't wait. It can't wait for us to decide and we need to move now.
So I want to go to excited, and speaking about grants, we just announced one today going to Clear Creek and Jefferson County. I assume that's one of the things you're excited about. Talk about that and what else you guys are excited about.
Yeah, the grant that we received is something to be very excited about if you're in a small county next to a very large county. Clear Creek County, working with the Jefferson Center for Mental Health, supported and is the fiscal sponsor for a grant to help build a facility that's located on the western side of Jefferson County, so closer for the residents of the rural mountain areas in Clear Creek, Gilpin, and in Jefferson County. And a piece of that grant is transportation for those populations to be able to access that service. We're not going to get a facility of that scale in a community of 9,000 people. So we can find other innovative models by building relationships. So really excited about that grant, and really excited at the regional level and the statewide level just to see who responds to all our RFPs that are on the streets, and what we can learn from that about the gaps that are out there in terms of capacity and services that we want and aren't seeing. I think that's going to really inform the next round and the next steps as we continue to work towards being strategic about filling in the gaps where services don't exist.
Just briefly. I would just dovetail on what Commissioner Marlin said, and I would add that the first day our RFPs were released, we had nearly 60 clicks on those RFPs from those who are interested in applying. We're really excited about that. I also want to come back to something Commissioner Lasky talked about, and I embraced it wholeheartedly when you said you had 52 people at the table. We have upwards of 40 people, including our council as well as our advisory council, and it comes back to what we heard Commissioner Porter Norton mention earlier, that it go slow to go fast. And for us, it was important to have everyone around the table while also identifying who was missing. And that's how we landed on 5 priority areas for those RFPs, including acute substance use disorder treatment, recovery housing, harm reduction, co-responders, recovery community organizations. And it was smaller committees that identified those priority areas, brought them back to the council. We looked at that together, and we'll go through that same process moving forward as we review applications that are coming before GROC.
So Ryan, also we announced you guys are getting a grant, so talk about that grant, talk about what else you're excited about.
I think the grant is an excellent example of what Mesa County has been doing, and why we're so excited about this work as an abatement council is that we're just being able to layer one success after the other, and it's just building momentum. We identified our key performance indicators and what we really wanted to go after, and we've been able to just layer those. We had already identified in Mesa County that we have a mental health disparity, and accessing therapy and accessing mental health is one of the areas that our citizens want to see change. And so the county was already working with our multi-agency collaborative effort, or our MAC program, to get case management as people were leaving jail. This was an area that our community already identified, and our recovery community said, we need to work on this, and people stepped up and said, we can get peers into that area. And so we've just been layering one after the other, and so this new grant, adolescent care, was an area that was lacking, that the citizens had identified and needed to be addressed, that the recovery and non-voting members were really passionate about, and that the council was also passionate about. And that's where the Lighthouse program with Jackie Berry, who spoke yesterday, came to be with our DA. And one of the areas that we're lacking is being able to get substance use treatment to our adolescents in group therapy format. They're able to come to my clinic and others and get individual treatment and individual therapy, but we were lacking that. And so this is going to allow us to expand a physical location where adolescents are able to receive this group therapy. And so it's just, I'd say, as a community, what we're most excited about, and just trying to plug in the resources we already have existing to make sure that that keeps happening.
Jared, what excites you about this process?
Personally, I'll start with that. I've learned so much, just the ability to ask for help, and everyone across the state, whether it's in Pueblo or I see Nathan Riggs in there asking about prevention, getting ideas on prevention, what that actually means for boots on the ground individuals. So I've learned a ton, and been able to bring that learning to the communities, to folks that would never, maybe never have that opportunity, whether it's folks with lived experience or some of our elected officials. I think that's something that I'm continually excited for, is that ability to reach out, ask for help, and to get incredible technical assistance from anybody in the state.
Great. Jeff?
I've learned a lot so far. One of the most important things, I volunteered as chair, and apparently the only chair I really know how to be on is the one in my living room. So it's great though to have the support. It's been difficult to get all 5 counties in our region to come together, so we are in the process of looking for a facilitator to help us out with that. But what I'm really most excited for is just all these programs, to watch them grow and continue to build on, not just in our region, but across the state. It's very important work that we're doing, and the most important thing is it's going to be saving lives. And having the communities build on the education and learn more about this so they can support individuals through their recovery and inspire more to pursue recovery and be successful in it is what I'm most excited for.
So Joe, I want to pivot to concerns because you have already adverted to the issue, and it came up. I really appreciated Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Hansen's honesty. The building the relationships and the building the foundation is hard. And if you look at your district, you have a disadvantage that Commissioner Lasky doesn't have. In the Sanders Valley, people are used to coming together, particularly in Alamosa. In these 5 counties, I could imagine in an alternative universe that they were used to come together in Steamboat Springs in person regularly. But that's not this universe. And so how can we help you bring what are, again, not well-resourced counties in a more connected way together? Because your region has the challenge that I think we've heard from Liz and Sue, and we've heard from others, and it's formidable. So as we think about that challenge, how are you thinking about it? How can we help you?
That's a great question. And, you know, if you were around to hear Sheriff Hume speak yesterday, if anyone heard Sheriff Hume speak in Moffat County, he's the Moffat County Sheriff. One of the biggest challenges we face out there is the lack of resources, right? And Steamboat and Routt County, we're kind of fortunate because it is a ski resort town. We have a lot more resources than, say, Jackson County. Jackson County is really out there. It's rural. It's hard to get clinicians and people to come to these communities. If you're looking at just Routt County, the cost of living is incredibly high. If you're looking at places in like Jackson County, it's very rural and the winters are really tough out there. So that's why we wanted to focus on clinician retention and youth prevention to begin with. And we all have our full-time jobs, right? I'm in the jail full-time. I'm doing my JBBS work. My counterpart in Moffat, Becky Copeland, she's the public health director out there. It's been incredibly busy juggling our full-time jobs and doing this. So any kind of support from the AG's office is greatly appreciated. It's been amazing thus far, and we are moving forward with it. And like every new thing, it has its challenges, but I'm very confident we're going to overcome everything, and I'm proud of the work we're doing. So just having that acknowledgement that it is rural, and in Jackson County, the individual we had on the board for a while was not just the public health director, but she was also the school nurse and worked at the local hospital. So, and then, oh, hey, join this committee and sit and tell us how we can manage these funds or where to put them. It's been difficult, and that's why we're looking into a facilitator to help organize us a little more.
So not that it should make you necessarily feel better, Joe, but I know, Jared, you've got a similar challenge, which is you've got a set of counties where there's not necessarily this shared experience of aligned leadership. You're having to build it. How are you approaching that challenge, and how can we help?
Well said. I think one of the things that we are looking for, will be looking for, is that consultation. So those opportunities to have somebody come in and organize our meetings, organize the outreach from across the region. I think one of the things that gets in the way is the socioeconomic disparities with Aspen, right? Thinks nobody needs help in Aspen. That's not necessarily true. But then you go into Western Garfield and Debec Canyon. There's issues there that need to be addressed that some leadership may not go down there. And I think I don't have an answer for that. I think we're still trying to figure out how to address the differences in our region. I think that's when I think about what I'm worried about. That's the biggest one. Is the differences there from our Leadville to Aspen to Debec. There's a huge range of difference there. So I don't have an answer, and I think continue to have these opportunities to learn from each other, reach out to different entities is super helpful.
Well, I think we should note, you did get a grant to help on some of that capacity building. This came up in the last panel, and we're aware of this. The building the capacity is hard, and all of you who are doing it should start by realizing this is hard work. We're not all as fortunate as Mesa County, which had the built capacity, or I mentioned Northern Colorado has had some built capacity for those who are having to build it. So let me jump to Patrick and Kirsten, as you guys are doing that, you're in a similar situation. How are you thinking about that building of capacity?
Well, we kind of see it as a holistic thing, as not one county for themselves. We have the needs, but we can't all have a withdrawal management program within each county because we just don't have enough. Won't be filled with clientele. So one county may have something that the other counties can benefit from, and we can travel there. We are interested in definitely the infrastructure grant for this next one, the 3, and learning what we've learned yesterday already, doing something interagency or interregional, I think would be very helpful for us because we're also surrounded by other rural counties and frontier counties. And also just making sure that, like was said earlier, when people have to leave and we hire new people, bring new people into our councils, is that we don't lose that focus and that motivation and that excitement that we have right now, being just on year 2. Trying to think way off into the future, 18 years from now. I know it's an epidemic and it's a crisis, but at the same time, we need to move very, very intentionally and very well laid out, where having our documentation so 10, 15 years from now we can look back and see where we were and where we're going and kind of where we've come, and also just not to lose that excitement that was previously spoken about in a previous question, and that it doesn't fade away. And onboarding, of course, is really important for each new member, because it's weird coming into something in the middle of it and feeling like you don't have a say or being empowered. So making sure that each new person is able to fit right in.
And I think it's really important to also recognize when one county does have more resources than the other, and how can that one county lift up our smaller frontier counties? How can we work together and not be like, oh no, I need this for my county? It's really, how can we do this as a region moving forward?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and again, just the communication between all of our counties. The example earlier was the Boys and Girls Club. Custer County, we don't have one, and Fremont County and some others have reached out thinking, well, let's get a bus and let's do some transportation and get your kids to our Boys and Girls Club. So a lot of inter-county collaboration and work.
Well, and that gets to what's going on here. Leslie, talk about how you're doing it, and as you think ahead, what you see as the big challenges.
You know, we've been talking a lot throughout this morning about capacity and capacity building and what that looks like. And I think another part of that, even for the larger counties especially, is rethinking how we do our work and how are we thoughtful but also nimble in our approach. Jefferson County serves as the fiscal agent for our region, and we have Chris Hapgood here who works very closely with us to ensure that every dollar we spend is spent in the right way to save lives, to help people in need and more. What I will say as one of our challenges is we have a very clear procurement process we follow that is embedded with best practices. We have a different process for the council, which has been very engaged in terms of members of that council. So you have two very different approaches. So recently we had a meeting to come together to determine how we marry those two, because it's so critical that every step of the way our advisory group and our council see this process through. And core to our success also has been the Stedman Group. You've heard from a number of folks on this panel and others. We run 1,000 miles per hour as county commissioners, as mayors, public health experts, and others. To have Rhiannon Strait, CC, and JK working with us as sort of our, certainly as thought partners, but as almost very strategic, purposeful air traffic controllers as we do this work collaboratively has really meant a lot to us in terms of our success. And then also always anticipating what's around the corner.
And Lindsay Houston. Just have to mention another name there. She's very helpful in our region and some others. Lindsay Houston is a huge help, and it helps really free up things that we can do as well. So not just to keep us on focus and on track and help us with all the logistics and behind the scenes stuff and facilitation, but it allows us to focus on what we need to be doing.
Commissioner Marlin, give you the final word.
Yeah, the thing I would add to what Commissioner Dahlkemper said, within GROC we've been very focused on voices with lived experience, and there's been a lot of discussion about that. And there's also been discussion about people being concerned about the sustainability of the effort of elected officials and paid staff. I think we also need to keep an eye on the sustainability of the participation of folks with lived experience. We are starting to see a little bit of a drop-off in our own region, and I think it's time for us really to start thinking statewide about maybe everybody who's at the table should be paid to be there, so that we can continue to make that voice.
On that note, we will thank the panel, and we will move to our final panel before lunch. Please move up as quickly as possible. Thank you all. It's great.